So if you need something to take with you this week, just remember you're standing on a promise. Do me a favor, look at your neighbor. Say, neighbor, I have a purpose. God had a purpose for Abraham that Abram could not see in himself. 75 years old, I keep bringing it up. His wife was 65. But God said, I'm going to make you the father of many nations. You see my face? That defies science. Because in biology, stuff stops working for certain people at certain times. So if you told me that you were going to make me father of many nations, I'd be like, dude, seriously. It's not possible. He believed God anyway. There were a number of discussions that they had. God came to him through people. God came to him through visions. God came through him through dreams. But God kept his promise. I sit back and I think, in my life, a number of things that have happened, a number of prayers that I've thrown up there, and I'm sure you've thrown some prayers up there too. And you're waiting for that miracle to happen, but it never seems to be coming when you need that to happen. Transparency. For the last 2 years, since my mother's had her aneurysm, her health's been going down. The last time that we were in the hospital, they told her she could not go home unless she put on a vest. And the vest would shock her if her heart gave out. 2 years. Funny thing about prayer is we're told that we should pray without ceasing. And even when I thought that I was in one of my weakest moments for her, she solicited my prayer. The next day she goes to the doctor. She goes to the doctor the next day and she's on the other line. I just thought it was a typical phone call to work it. And she's screaming to the high heavens, your prayer worked. Just remember in a moment of faith that prayer changes things. You know, it's great to know that you serve a God that said he would keep his promise. And as I told her, I said, Mama, it wasn't me, but it was him. And she said, I know, but you allowed him to use you. We serve a God that keeps his promises even when we don't deserve it. We serve a God that'll wake us up in the morning. He'll put air in our lungs. He'll flow the blood through our body so that we can move our limbs back and forth every day. He's given us jobs. He's given us homes. He's given us hope in hopeless situations. God has kept his promise. Abraham has more mess than he can deal with. At one time, he runs into an issue with his nephew, and he just said, hey, little nephew, take that over there. You and your crew, and I worked this over here. Because he didn't want any beef. But he kept going to God and said, you promised me a child. The heir to my house right now is my servant. Isn't it great to know that you serve a God that cannot lie? And even greater, you serve a God that cannot fail. You know, Abram was given his name by his daddy. I don't know if some of you know, but his daddy was an idol worshiper. His wife couldn't bear children. She couldn't. They said, you can't have no kids. But God. He blessed them immensely. Even in spite of them. And I keep saying that because, you know, it took 25 years for God to give them that child. And just like some of us, even girlfriend lost her patience and she said, yo, go take my little slave girl down there to the shack. God stopped talking to Abraham for 13 years. Because he didn't listen to what he said. He wasn't patient. But God still stood on his promise. You fast forward 2,000 years, and the same God that put the stars in the vault of the sky used a star to guide 3 wise men to Jesus. He kept his promise. Jesus was brought here to liberate us. Not from slavery, but from ourselves. It's because of his blood that I can stand here today. And I can testify to you of what a mess I've been. And what a mess I am. He kept his promise. Can you imagine what would happen if Abraham had a Bible? All right. 66 books of promises. Yeah. Can you imagine if he had that? Do you think he would have been better off? Do you think he would have not done some of the things that he did that weren't necessarily highlighted in the Bible totally because God said, I am going to bless you in spite of you. That's right. 66 books. Abraham had something with God that we in the church today call a relationship. The best way to get in a relationship with God is to go through his 66 books. Inside of those 66 books, you will find 2 testaments, an Old Testament and a New Testament, both of which tell historical stories that can help you today. 66 books, 39 in the Old Testament, 27 in the New. You get to meet Jesus in both Testaments. You just gotta dig. But the truth is, he stood by his promise. Yeah. He blessed Abraham because he's Abraham after having a child. He took him from being Abram, the great father, to Abraham, the father of many nations. He stood by his promise. Think of how many times you went into your prayer closet or didn't go in your prayer closet, but you needed God to show up in the midst of your situation. And he stood by his promise. Think about when your child was being wayward and you didn't know what to do. You fell to your knees and you cried out. He stood by his promise. Baby girl, he left you. And he left you with kids. And you didn't know how it was going to happen. But God stepped in and he intervened. Because he stood by his promise. I'll never leave you nor forsake you. Open up your Bible. 66 books of love and promise. God standing by his promise. Y'all need it. We're standing on promises, family. He didn't just do it for me. He didn't just do it for Abram.